The phone rang, interrupting the quiet hum of my evening routine. For a moment, I debated whether to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I said tentatively. A man's voice erupted on the other end, startling me with its intensity. "Hey, Nancy, are you even listening?" I froze. The voice was so familiar, nostalgic even, but also full of anger. It left me reeling. My thoughts stumbled over one another as I struggled to respond. Who is this?" I stammered. "Nancy, it's me, Mark." I gasped. My husband, Mark? That was impossible. He had passed away 10 years ago. "My name is Nancy. I'm 49 years old, a widow, and the mother of 2 children, Jake and Kate. My husband Mark died a decade ago, leaving me to raise our family alone. Jake, my eldest, is 23 now and recently got married. The wedding was last month and I wasn't invited." Jake's decision stung, but it didn't entirely surprise me. We had drifted apart over the years, and I often wondered if it was my fault. I hadn't objected to his fiancée, not outright, but I had voiced my concern of the speed of their relationship. "She seems like a nice girl," I had told him, "but couldn't you take things slower? What's the rush? What if something happens, like with your father, and you regret rushing into this?" Jake's response had been cold and cutting. I still remembered the ache it left in my chest. Mark had been a brilliant man, a college professor specializing in animal behavior. His passion for his work was part of what had drawn me to him in the first place. When he was offered a position at an international research institute, he was ecstatic. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," he had told me, his eyes alight with excitement. The world's leading expert personally invited me to join their team. I had hesitated. Jake's on the brink of his teenage years, and Kate's still so little. "Can't you at least wait until she starts school?" But Mark was relentless. He even got down on his knees to beg. His determination chipped away at my resistance, and I finally relented. How could I deny him the biggest chance of his career? We saw him off at the airport as a family of 3. Watching his plane take off, I felt a pang of unease, but I pushed it aside. I never imagined it would be the last time I saw him. 3 weeks later, I received a message from the embassy. Mark had gone missing during a field research trip. Witnesses said his team had been attacked by wildlife, and Mark was the only one who didn't make it out. Days later, they found his torn right shoe in a forest, kilometers from the attack site. The authorities declared his survival impossible, and he was pronounced dead. The grief was suffocating. I spiraled into depression, barely managing to function. I moved back in with my parents and attended therapy to piece myself back together, all while raising 2 young children without their father. "Mark?" My voice quivered, bringing me back to the present. How are you alive?" "Alive? Nancy, what are you talking about?" Mark's voice was laced with confusion. 10 years ago, you were declared dead during your research trip," I said, my heart pounding. "I've been raising Jake and Kate alone ever since." "What?" His disbelief mirrored my own. "Nancy, that's insane. I couldn't return home, but I've been emailing you all these years. I even sent recent photos of myself, and you sent me pictures of the kids all grown up." His words left me reeling. "Emails? I don't remember any emails." The line went silent. I gripped the phone tightly, struggling to breathe. "Nancy," Mark's voice returned, quieter now. "Are you serious? No emails? None at all?" "Absolutely none," I whispered, my mind racing. This has to be some kind of scam. Or a ghost. "Mark, give me your email address." "Prove it." And with that, the surreal conversation took a turn I could never have expected. I jotted down the email address Mark recited, repeating it back to confirm. Then, with shaky hands, I opened my computer and sent him an email while staying on the phone. "It's sent," I said. There was a moment of silence before Mark's voice broke through. "Is this the email you've been using all these years?" "Yes," I replied. "You know I prefer to have everything in one place." "This isn't the address I've been emailing." My heart dropped. For 10 years, Mark had been emailing someone else, believing it was me. The photos of me and the kids, the updates he thought he'd received, had come from someone impersonating me. I've always kept my communications and accounts consolidated. Mark knew that. He exhaled sharply, his voice tinged with confusion. "Then who have I been emailing all these years?" We were both stunned, grappling with the implications. Can you forward me the emails and attached photos? Let's talk tomorrow after I've had a chance to review them. Okay, Mark's voice was distant, and he hung up soon after. Mark had been alive for a decade, and I had believed he was gone. This was supposed to be a miraculous reunion, but instead, our call ended with unsettling formalities. Reality doesn't unfold like a heartwarming TV drama. Kate came home hungry, and I prepared dinner, my thoughts racing. Hours later, after Kate had gone to bed, I returned to my computer. Mark had sent 3 emails. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. The first email began, "Today was Kate's first day of elementary school. She seemed sad being the only one without her dad there. When will we finally get a family picture?" Attached was a photo of Kate standing shyly in front of her school's entrance, clutching her backpack. My breath caught. I recognized the picture. I had taken it, but I didn't remember ever sending it to Mark. The second email was a collage of family moments. Jake's high school graduation, Kate in a summer dress with her friends, Jake's 18th birthday, a family trip to the beach. The sheer number of private photos made my head spin. The third email was even more chilling. It contained photos from Jake's wedding, Jake with his bride, a sibling portrait of Jake and Kate, and even a shot of me with Jake. I leaned back in my chair, numb. Most of these photos were from holiday cards or personal updates I'd shared with close friends and family. Only someone in my inner circle could have had access to them. The truth hit me like a freight train. Someone in my family had been impersonating me. The phone rang the next day. "Did you see the emails?" Mark asked. "Yes," I replied softly. "I didn't send any of those." "I know," Mark said grimly. "I'm sending you another email. Open it now." I did as he asked. The message read, "Yesterday, I sent an email as usual. Here's the reply I received." The forwarded message began, "Talking to you on the phone was unbelievable, Mark. I always wondered why you didn't call during these 10 years. Mark's accompanying note mirrored my thoughts. "The imposter told me not to call, giving excuses like Kate being asleep, your work schedule, or my field assignments. It became normal to email instead. But when I didn't get a call about Jake's wedding, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong." Mark and I exchanged uneasy silence, the scale of the deception settling in. "Who do you think it is?" he asked finally. I hesitated before answering. "Carla." Carla, my younger sister, 3 years my junior. She had always been kind, stepping in to help with the kids and manage paperwork when Mark disappeared. But only Carla, or possibly my parents, could have accessed all those photos. My parents, however, weren't tech savvy, and they'd never impersonate me. That left Carla. We ended the call without any real answers. Mark was preparing to leave on another research trip, so there would be no more calls for a while. Over the next 2 weeks, I replayed the past decade in my mind, scrutinizing every memory for clues. How had Mark survived abroad if he was declared dead? Did Carla know Mark was alive all along? Had she colluded with him, or was she acting alone? But if they were working together, why would Mark contact me now? None of it added up. Then Mark called again, his voice urgent. "Nancy, where's the money?" I froze. "What money?" "The living expenses I've been sending every month," Mark said. My blood ran cold. For 10 years, someone had been receiving money from Mark, claiming it was for us. "I sent $4,000 monthly, plus extra for school fees and emergencies," Mark said, his voice heavy with regret. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't receive anything. Mark went quiet, clearly piecing everything together. "I used your old bank account from before we were married. I updated the name to yours after we wed but left the account otherwise untouched." His words set my heart racing. I rushed to the old storage box where I kept my account passbooks. My hands shook as I searched, only to realize the passbook for that specific account was missing. The room spun, and I had to steady myself against the table. The only person who could have taken it was Carla. She often came over to babysit the kids when I wasn't home. $4,000 a month for 10 years, I whispered, the weight of the sum hitting me like a punch. That, combined with extra funds, amounted to a small fortune. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated crime. "I'm so sorry, Nancy," Mark said, his voice thick with guilt. "I should have realized something was wrong and come back sooner." "It's not your fault," I replied, though my voice trembled with suppressed rage. I didn't even notice the missing passbook, but my sister, I couldn't finish the thought. We didn't blame each other. Instead, we focused on what needed to be done. Carla's actions weren't just a personal betrayal, they were criminal. The fog of confusion that had clouded my mind for weeks was gone, replaced by a sharp clarity. I had to confront Carla and hold her accountable, no matter how painful it might be. Memories of Carla helping me with paperwork after Mark's disappearance resurfaced. Back then, I had been so broken that even filling out basic forms had felt impossible. I vaguely remembered signing documents, but I hadn't paid attention to the details. My parents had once told me, "You're still young, Nancy. You might want to remarry someday. It's better to keep things separate from us." Because of that advice, we had created a new family registry for me and the kids. Looking back, it all made sense. Carla must have realized early on that Mark was still alive. Instead of submitting the death certificate, she likely filed a fake divorce decree, creating a new registry that allowed Mark to continue living and working abroad without raising suspicion. Her meticulous planning left me speechless. On the surface, Carla led a modest life, married with one child, living comfortably in the middle class. She wore simple clothes, and her spending seemed reasonable. Her son attended a private school, which was manageable for a family with one child. But where had all that money gone? Determined to uncover the truth, I hired a private investigator. When I explained the situation, the investigator looked stunned. "Is this really true?" they asked. I nodded grimly. The first 10 days of surveillance turned up nothing suspicious. Carla's life appeared as ordinary as ever. "Do you want to extend the investigation?" the investigator asked. "Yes," I replied. "I need answers." It didn't take long for my instincts to be proven right. On the day Mark's usual transfer came through, Carla made her move. The investigators captured her using my old card and passport to withdraw cash from the account. Then she headed straight to a nightclub. Photos showed her entering and leaving the club, clinging to a man on her way out, gazing at him as though reluctant to part. 3 days later, the same man reappeared. Carla met him during the day for a shopping spree, buying him expensive luxury gifts before returning to the nightclub that evening. When the investigator presented the evidence, I felt a wave of nausea. For years, I had thanked Carla for helping me through the darkest days of my life. Now I realized she had deceived me and squandered Mark's hard-earned money. Tears of anger welled in my eyes as I printed the photos. The betrayal was overwhelming. I shared the evidence with Mark, who was even more devastated than I was. "I left you because of my own ambition," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "But I tried to make sure you didn't struggle financially." He had done his best to support us, and yet we had been robbed, not just of money, but of trust and peace. "I can't believe none of the money reached you," Mark said, his voice filled with anger and regret. "Money can be replaced, but I can't forgive Carla for what she put you through." We both agreed it was time to involve the authorities. Together, we compiled all the evidence and reported Carla's actions to the police. On the day Mark's usual transfer was scheduled, the police were ready. At the bank, an officer approached Carla as she was making a withdrawal. "Ma'am, may I see your ID?" the officer asked, flashing his badge. Carla froze, her face turning pale. She handed over her license with a forced smile. "Here. Now can I go?" "Just one more thing," the officer said calmly. "Can we see the passbook for the account you just withdrew from?" Carla's smile faltered. "Why isn't the ID enough? I've cooperated, haven't I?" The suspect in a series of fraud cases withdraws significant amounts from accounts not under their name, the officer explained. "If the passbook matches, this will be quick." Carla's expression shifted to panic as her eyes darted around the room. "Miss Carla Smith," the officer continued, "isn't that your sister's account?" Everything was out in the open now. Carla's shoulders sagged as she realized she'd been caught. She tried to bolt, but a younger officer restrained her. "We found the passbook and bank card for Nancy Wilson's account," the officer said, holding them up as evidence. From our position nearby, Mark and I stepped forward. The sight of us stunned Carla. "Nancy, Mark, why are you here? Together?" she stammered, her voice a mix of shock and disbelief. "You kept this act going for 10 years, didn't you?" I said, my voice trembling. "I almost admire how thoroughly you deceived us. But it's over now. The lies end here, Carla." It was you sending Jake's wedding photos that made me call Nancy, Mark added, his tone sharp. That's when we realized everything. Carla's blank expression turned into a smirk. So I dug my own grave, huh? She let out a laugh that sent chills through the room, 10 years without anyone noticing. I guess I got too confident. Why, Carla? Mark demanded, his voice cold. This is a crime. Why would you do this? Oh, officer, this is just a misunderstanding, Carla said, her voice dripping with false innocence. I was running an errand for my sister. No, Carla. Stop lying, I snapped. I won't protect you anymore. Carla glared at me, her eyes full of contempt. You always have everything, Nancy, she spat. The piano lessons, the private school, the career you wanted, a perfect husband. Everything. It was never fair. I stared at her shocked. So you weren't after the money? You did this just to hurt me? Yes, she screamed. I wanted to see you struggle, to watch you suffer for once. But Carla, your grievances don't even make sense. I shouted back. You quit piano lessons, you failed to pass your exams, and you dropped out of school. How was that my fault? Her reasons were painfully immature, and I felt a wave of pity. I even thanked you for helping me when I thought Mark was gone, I said, my voice breaking. That's right, Carla sneered. You thought I was your savior while I was laughing behind your back. You really are a fool, Nancy. That's enough, the officer interrupted, snapping handcuffs onto Carla's wrists. We'll continue this at the station. As the officers escorted Carla away, she cast one last venomous look at us. Mark and I stood in stunned silence, grappling with the depth of her betrayal. Carla's decade-long deception was finally exposed. She was convicted of fraud and forgery, receiving a lengthy prison sentence. Over 10 years, she had spent more than $700,000 of Mark's money, with little to show for it. My parents disowned her, refusing to visit her in prison. Her husband filed for divorce and moved away with their child, severing all ties. Mark and I decided not to be lenient. Carla needed to repay what she had stolen, even if it took a lifetime. The fake divorce she orchestrated was annulled, and Mark and I were legally married again. Mark's parents offered heartfelt apologies for their part in the ordeal, and for the first time in years, we gathered as a family. We celebrated Jake's wedding and Mark's miraculous return. For Kate, who barely remembered her father, adjusting would take time. But we were patient, ready to rebuild together. Mark retired from international research, taking a prestigious university position as a full professor. How did you survive? I asked one evening, still marveling at his return. It was a miracle, Mark said. The bear dragged me deep into the forest and knocked me out cold. When I woke up, it was gone, along with my backpack. I stumbled through the woods, injured and disoriented, until I finally found help. He took my hand gently. I'm here now, Nancy, and I'm never leaving again. I squeezed his hand in return, tears streaming down my face. Thank you for coming back. Together, we began to reclaim the decade we had lost.